Hi, this is Margaret Maloney, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. Together we will consider life, death, and impermanence. Because in between birth and death, we lose things. Not just our glasses and our keys. We lose identities, relationships, ideas, and more. But what we can gain right now is facing this together, and we will gain freedom, peace, and progress on our path. Hello, my friends. Today I'm sharing with you some thoughts on my discussion with Shelley F. Knight, which was our most recent episode of the Death Dhamma podcast. And Shelley has written a couple of what she calls self-kick books. I love that phrase, self-kick, a little kick in the backside to get you going where you need to help your own self. Positive Change, a self-kick book, can be found on her website, which is Shelley, Shelley, F, like Frank, Knight, KNIGHT.com. And Good Grief can be found on johnhuntpublishing.com. Shelley has a lot of experience with death, the big D, the loss of, an actual sentient being who was an important part of our life, and also the little d, the disappointments along the way. And she does such a skillful job of really weaving these things together when she spoke with us. And when she defines grief, she doesn't say it's about the death of a loved one. She talks about that as being more about, when we're sad that someone has died, that's more bereavement. She says, grief is not death of a loved one. It's anything with which you've had an emotional connection. When you lose something that you've had that emotional connection with, it could involve an actual death, but it could also be a relationship or a job or your finances or your health. An example she gives is, she started off as a nurse and she had a certain idea of what it was going to be like to be a nurse in terms of helping others and saving others. And she wound up working with more of the end-of-life patients. And certainly she felt that it was her privilege to help people with end of life. That work in itself represented for her the death of an ideal because it wasn't what she thought her career in nursing was going to be like. She wisely points out that everyone is grieving something because in our lives we have losses and changes and disappointments all of the time. And that one of the best things we can do is sit in silence and see what comes up. And that is very close to some of the themes we talked about in season 1 with some of our Buddhist spiritual teachers when we talked about the fact of sitting. In fact, the book is called Sitting with Death. And we talked about sitting with your grief and your sadness and noting what comes up, and that you don't have to be it, but that you want to notice it. And Shelley says this in her own way because she's not speaking to us necessarily as a Buddhist spiritual teacher. She is speaking to us as someone who believes that, we are all definitely spiritual beings. But she does mention you can't control when grief comes. We had a little talk about that. I had shared with her how I wished I could have scheduled it, but you can't schedule it. And she talks about the grief tsunami, which I think is such a critical phrase. A grief tsunami. She says that, after you think you have control and you're moving along, one day, this grief tsunami, this big wave of grief is just going to hit you and knock you over. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing to be done with that other than to just be with it. She talks about mini deaths, and that's what we're all about this season, right? Those mini deaths with the small d, the small lowercase d. And these are, she also called them bite-sized elements of grief where we have the opportunity to practice dealing with loss and to notice how we deal with loss. These mini deaths can help us And we can notice how our families and friends and teachers around us deal with these losses. And that's an indicator of how we also might behave, unless we choose to be different, unless we choose to behave in a way that is different than the culture that's been set up around us. And from learning that, Shelley has become very open about her grieving, and whether she's grieving a mini death or other, she is open about grieving, especially in front of her children, in order for them to see that this is part of life and to bring it into part of their family culture and way of being. Because like many of us, she has come from a background of, you kind of sweep these things under the carpet. And on the one hand, you're supposed to be sad. But on the other hand, after a certain amount of time, people don't want to see you being sad, but they want you to be sad. And we talked about that a little bit too, about how, if you've suffered a significant loss, it's almost, some people are almost angry with you when you shine through. It just shows you, as human beings, we have some work to do here in terms of our cultural expectations of ourselves and others, whether it's a mini death or a big death. Shelley gave us some really good tips for handling ourselves and our grief, which is, first of all, don't listen to how others want you to grieve. Know yourself. And look at the tools that you have. Think about a time in life, another time in life, where you've gotten yourself through a tough situation. Because as she reminds us, so far, your survival rate is 100%. You do need to find your own meaning, because those of us who have meaning in our lives are more resilient. And it's that resiliency that carries us through these losses and these bouts with impermanence. Shelley really talks about the importance of finding something that is meaningful to you. It gives you something else to focus on. Find something, she says, find something that lights you up. Where does your mind go? Where do you mentally wander in those quiet moments? In those quiet moments. For Shelley, it was writing, and that has led her to become an author. And she notes that if you can't find what you like, then work on removing what you don't like from your life. Do some decluttering, because maybe there's too many things in the way. And as you declutter and you remove from your life the things you don't like, it gives you an opportunity to really see what it is you do like. And there are 5 life lessons Shelley has learned along the way that she generously shares with us. Number 1, be happier. You're going to find out that the little things were the big things all along. Number 2, connect to something bigger than yourself. And actually, we are a little bit insignificant. There are many things that are bigger than ourselves. And this connection with something, a cause, a belief system, something bigger than yourself, actually helps you feel like you are part of the big picture. Speak your truth. She remembers a patient one time that she met who was in difficult stages of esophageal cancer, and he was actually going to have his voice box removed. And in his life, he had lived his life in a way that made others around him happy, but not himself. And, he had a lot of regrets. And soon he was going to have a hard time getting those regrets out because he was going to lose his ability to speak. Now, the good news is that he did find a way to get some of it out. But don't wait. Don't wait until you almost lose your voice box. Speak your truth. Number 4, just do more of what you love. And number 5, live your life. You are more than one chapter. There's more than one chapter in your life. For example, yes, Shelley was a nurse, and we did speak about that. Now she is an author. She still has friends that will come back to her and ask her when is she going to go back to nursing, because for some reason they see her still as the nurse, or they feel that something about nursing is more suitable, whatever. It fits their image for her. But it doesn't matter because it's her life. It doesn't matter. It is your life. And you can see how that also ties with speaking your truth. Shelley's truth is that she is an author. And we are lucky that she came to visit and speak with me and share her truth and share her beliefs around the fact that, one way or another, all of us are grieving something. So be happier, connect to something bigger than yourself, speak your truth, do more of what you love, and live your life. Thanks, everyone. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, margaretmeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.